Good morning and welcome to Nigeria Now, showing on your digital first Pan-African news network all the way from Nigeria's federal capital city, Abuja. My name is Merciful Ajinomo. We're being joined in the studio by our analyst, Adebayo Fajimi. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Now, we have a couple of stories this morning. Let's begin from the Daily Sun newspaper. The banner headline there says, Fuel price hike, electoral bill make or mar factors in 2022. The writer says party primaries, unstable economy, others of concern. Also, of course, that can be found on the Daily Sun on page 20. And then we see from the very top there, IPOB presses to stop cow meat in Southeast. The details of that story can be found on page 7. Besides the picture of the day there, 3 killed in Plateau as Lalong vows to sign death penalty for kidnappers. That can be found on page 4. Electoral bill, Nigeria not ripe for direct primaries, coming from IPAC. We of course that can be found on page 8. And then Buhari, Ganduje, Atiku, Ayim, ACF, others mourn as Tofa, ex-presidential candidate, is buried in Kanu. That can be found on page 8. On page 26 rather, 2023, Ayim braves Southeast leaders, supporters on presidential ambition Thursday. He's got credentials, experience to rule Nigeria. That's coming from Ikpeazu. A New Year's shocker, woman delivers, dumps baby in airplane toilet, being that can be found on page 4. And then we see Lagos Blue, red lines rail to commence operation fourth quarter, says Shanwolu. That can be found on page 7. Federal government targets 95% digital literacy by 2030. That can be found on page 25. Among all these updates on the Daily Sun, which of the headline is grabbing your attention the most?
I think that fuel price hike is grabbing my attention. And, I'm just wondering, just like the federal government said last year that they are removing fuel subsidy, I'm just imagining, what becomes of African Nigeria this month, because if the price of crude oil, goes up, you can imagine how it's going to affect the livelihood on African Nigeria. And because the truth be told, the 5,000 naira, grants that will be given to the poorest people, I think about 40% according to the federal government, cannot solve what is on ground. Even when the federal government has not removed the subsidy, we know what we are facing. So I'm just imagine, the plight, the difficulty that African Nigeria is going to, because if you remove the first subsidy, it goes high. So who's going to bear the brunt? The person who wants to go to the market to buy stuff, you want to travel, there is no sector that this will not literally affect. And I just hope that things doesn't get worse than it is at the moment.
Okay. Of course, we still see some stories right there on the Daily Sun. We see PwC warns of Nigeria's rising debt profile. That can be found on page 2. 6.25 trillion naira deficit above FRA limit. And we can get all of that on page 2 of the Daily Sun. In Southeast, dialogue with agitators. PDP leader charges federal government to dialogue with agitators. Of course, that can be found on page 26. We'll move over to the Punch newspaper. The banner headline there is New Year celebrations. Experts project high infection rate as Nigerians shun protocols at fun spot. Of course, that can be found on page 2. 2 riders. The first, uncontrolled crowds at beaches. Others, to feel community transmission, expert warns. Recovery rate drops by 73.2%. NCDC distribute 400,000 COVID-19 testing kit. That can be found on the Punch newspaper. I do know that, of course, the Yuletide season, Christmas, and of course, New Year, we've seen so many people at so many different spots, especially in the city of Abuja. And it looks like people are not really concerned with what's going on right now, even as we have the new variant of COVID-19, which is the Omicron. But still, we're still seeing statistics, recovery rate, according to the NCDC, is saying it has dropped by 73%. What do you think is really the issue? Because this has lasted from 2019 till date, and we still have Nigerians who do not care about this thing.
Yes, I think the orientation of people is very poor, and the way Nigerians are going about it. Don't be shocked. I think during my own vacation, so I was looking for means to take my booster and all of that. A couple of people I was just trying to tell about, have you taken your jab and all of that? They were just like, COVID does not exist, Jerry, my brother. I beg, let's forget that. In fact, I deliberately took one of my younger sister, you know, to a facility, and she refused that she's not taking that. Koro does not exist, you know. In fact, I remember one of the meetings I wanted to have, you know, with a senior journalist in my state in Oshun. And as you know, I went to his office with my face man, and the next thing they told me is, bro, I beg, remove this thing. COVID does not exist in Oshun. You know, what kind of mindset like that. So I think you know, our policymakers and those people who are, you know, who are in that sector needs to, like I've been saying this, that we need to be deliberate and be intentionally proactive in tackling this thing, especially in giving people proper orientation. If you go to, not only at fun sports, if you go to religious centers, it happens there. Even where I worship on 31st, I think myself and a brother from Lagos were the two people who put on our face mask, and we're just like strange people that what's wrong with these guys. You know, it's all over the place. So I think the government, you know, needs to be intentionally proactive to ensure that this does not spread beyond the way it is now, because people do not have proper orientation. The mindset is it does not exist. That who have you seen that Korah has killed? You know, and that has been you know, the song. So I think government needs to do more in giving people, you know, proper orientation about this particular virus.
Okay, we do hope that all of this is being sorted so it doesn't go into 2023. We see from the very top there on the front page of the Punch, CBN SEC others to lift financial sector with fresh 1.5 trillion naira investment, coming found on page 21. We see customs, immigration, 13 others failed to remit 127 billion naira. Of course, that's coming from the audit report. We can get out on page 22. Nigeria's debt vulnerable, costly, alerts World Bank. Of course, it's still on page 22. Sustained bombings force terrorists to surrender, ACF tells military. The details of that story can be found on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. Underneath the picture of the day there, we see Lagos train service will begin this year. That's coming from Sanwo-Olu. That can be found on page 6, and we do hope that all of this is being sorted so people can, you know, transport themselves from one point of location to another. That we can get that on page 6. Just read about that story. Then we see police go after revelers behind attack on Tenny in Rivers community. That can be found on page 5. That happened in one of Tenny's show. There was some attack and some issues there. So please, now we're seeing that on page 5. Going after the revelers behind the attack. We see on page 17, APC tackles Shehu Sani over governor bid, calls ex-senator idol blogger. That can be found on page 17. Let's see this one. Sanwo-Olu Wike others mourn Olubadan hailed monarch for contributions. We can get out on page 6 or 8 of the Punch newspaper. Men exchange blows, arrested as hired killer fails to eliminate pregnant ex-wife. All of that can be found on the Punch. We move over to the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Of course, we've seen an article here on the front page, governors to watch in 2022. That can be found on page 28 and 29 of the Punch of Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Besides the pictures of the day there, APC convention, Governors Forum DG faults Kalu's calls for postponement. Cautions Buni's committee, says it's a plot to destabilize party. That can be found on page 23. Olajengbesi was never Igbo's counsel, lacks vias to speak for him. That's coming from a senior advocate of Nigeria. We can get up on page 4. We see something there. Ibadan High Chiefs meet Lekan Balogun, endorse him as next Olubadan. Of course, that's after the Olubadan died recently. We can get out on page 2 and 3 of the Nigerian Tribune. On the Nation newspaper, the binary line there is Olubadan. Ibadan chiefs disagree over succession. We see the writer there says Ladoja's lawyers says Balogun not qualified kingmakers to follow traditional guidelines. That can be found on the Nation newspaper on page 4. And we see a ban right there. Twitter meets conditions. Buhari awaits panels report. That can be found on the Nation newspaper. And of course, you can get every other detail and update on our website. That is www.tostvnetwork.com, and happenings in Nigeria and of course across Africa. And our social media platforms are right there for you to stay updated and just interact with us. That is a TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Our YouTube right there is right there for you to like and subscribe so you do not miss out on our amazing content. Of course, thank you again for joining us on Nigeria Now today. My name is Merciful Ajinamo. See you tomorrow.